Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Founding Lore Fathers. This is your host, Rich. John and Dan are out tonight with some personal reasons. And so we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. Instead of talking about a crime, conspiracy, or cryptid, I'm actually going to be hashing some fatherly advice I gave out during COVID. One of the ways I killed time during lockdown and helped out, I guess, the community a little bit was doing some AMAs on Reddit, and I pulled a couple of questions and some answers that I gave out back then, and I'm going to share them with you. Hopefully, it's something you guys find interesting. And depending on how the reception goes, maybe I'll do another one or two of these things in the future. So let's just kind of just dive right in. So, one person advice. I don't have a dad to ask for it. Now, I don't really have a father that I can really ask questions about either. And so that's kind of it's a good question to ask for me. So, one of the first things I like to do is to treat everyone with kindness and to um, stand your ground and always remember that a carpenter can be your savior. Now, that last part, it's actually from a musician named Joey Harcum, and I'll probably link the song in the show notes. So it's a fun song to listen to. Another general advice is to always have a change of clothes and a towel in your car. Now, a bonus if you have a wife and kids, maybe a little bit of their clothes as well. Um, so you should never turn down advice, whether it's good or it's bad. Someone is still taking the time to try to help you out there, especially if you ask for it. And lastly, you should learn how to cook. You don't need to be a five-star chef or anything, but knowing how to make a couple simple meals and some decent dishes comes in handy just about every level of life. So, question two: how does one stop living in the past and move on in the future? And this commenter he says, I'm kind of happy. There's some major things that go all right in my life, but from time to time, I just can't let go of some certain things. And so the answer for this one is actually some advice I got from a my old hippie therapist. Um, she said that those thoughts come to your head, and you have to realize that they're there for a reason. So take some time and think about why you're feeling the way you're feeling, or what you're stuck on is actually you're actually stuck on for a reason. Maybe that reason is it's time you're finally at a place where you can actually react to the situation in your mind. You're finally able to deal with it. And this is a very real subject for me. Without getting into too many details, I actually deal with some PTSD. That's from my time as a first responder and in the military. And it hasn't happened in a long time, but I used to get stuck hard in the past. And what I've developed is the ability to replace the thoughts from the past with the pleasant ones of today. It's a problem that practice on and worked for. Like, for example, I'll focus on my personal accomplishments, such as like my wonderful kids, my smoking hot wife, and what I've been able to accomplish despite some of my physical and mental disabilities. Um, there's also the short answer, as the great Queen Elsa once said. The past is in the past, so let it go. Find a new thing to pursue. Um, Other than just what the past. It's here. It's a good thing to look into. Just changing up your music or something like that. If you're stuck in like a nostalgia thing, try to shake up your routine. This in a fortune cookie, but I also could have read it somewhere. I don't really remember. But it's a person trying to look both forward and backwards is permanently stuck running back and forth, kind of like a squirrel trying to cross the road. Hopefully, you don't get hit it or anything like that. So questions, share some tips on how to not lose focus while working. And this goes on a little bit more. It's actually kind of a hard to read question. But his general premise is it's not like this person's being lazy. They're just having a hard time focusing on things. And I would say, yeah, if you're feeling guilty about not focusing due to distractions, then that's probably a hint that it's probably just a hint of lazy somewhere in there. We all have it. There's nothing wrong with it. You probably need to face that monster head on before it goes anywhere. Um, some other steps I could recommend is like, so spend an hour, like the first hour in the morning, and dedicate that time to yourself. Now, personally, I like to wake up before the kids start the day. Most days I'll have like a big glass of water, maybe some coffee, go to the bathroom, all that fun stuff. I'll try to do 10 minutes of like just being in a quiet room. Maybe I'll play with my phone. Maybe I'll, just focus, try to do some meditation. I'll do 20 minutes of yoga, maybe do a quick exercise. Usually I'll read 5-10 minutes. It's actually where I do a lot of show prep at. Um, I'll write down some of my plans for the day. I'll try to write down some of my goals for either for school or research. Maybe there's a documentary I need to watch, some books I need to find, whatever. Um, and then I usually try to update goals. So like I know I'll try to plan ahead 6 months to 2 years ahead. Um, that's a good way to kind of keep track of that. It's all in that first hour. Um, Another good way to stay focused would be like once you get up, get dressed. Getting dressed, I mean, it's an important thing, especially if you're like working from home like I do. Pajamas are great, but I mean, really those should be like reserved for like eccentric people, people who are crazy and like who work at 24-hour gas stations at weird hours. Um I also think it's important to set some parameters, like say 2 hours of work, maybe 30 minutes of, kind of fucking off, daily daddling, whatever. Don't deviate too much into goofing off. It's just important that you have like your time for work, and, maybe you just need a little less of it. And that's why you're losing focus there. I also think that it's a good idea to have when you're working from home anyway, to have a designated work spot. And like, so I know when we do our writing and we do our shows, we have we record basically in the same spot every time. Same spot, same time. We just, hey, this is it. This is where we're here. Let's do it. And then when it comes to work, I mean, having actual goals to motivate yourself to get there. I mean, paying off a house, paying off a car, saving enough money for a down payment for a car, whatever it is. I mean, have that in your head. That way, like, hey, I need to be here. I need to be doing this. And so moving on to the next question. This one is, I'm getting married and I'm not inviting my parents. What would you do? You don't invite them. That's that simple. You just go to the courthouse, maybe a close friend or two, maybe a family member, who knows, one side, or like say one from your side, one from your spouse's side, but go on a Thursday. You go on a Thursday. So, like, once it's done, you and your new spouse head off that night. The next day, it's 3-day stress free honeymoon. This makes it so that everyone feels like they're not left out, and you didn't single anyone else out. If you still want a big wedding, wait until whatever wounds have healed, or have an anniversary wedding. And it's actually a pretty good question. So that's actually a similar approach that we took. So we have some in-law drama. One side doesn't like the other side, and there's step parents involved, and it can get kind of muddy. But when it comes to getting married, I firmly believe that you should wait until you're absolutely sure. I know we're going to talk about in one of the upcoming episodes a couple who got married pretty young because they were living in sin. I don't give a shit about that. I think that there are like three types of people who get married, like three types of surprise marriages, I should say. Just one where people got married young. It's like, oh, I didn't know you guys were getting married. It happened so fast. Then there's people who are surprised because they weren't invited, and that happens. That's cool. And there are people like myself, and I'm not saying my life is, you should live your life the way I live my life. My life doesn't fit everyone else's. But my wife and I were together for so long. When we got married, people were shocked that we weren't married already. I think that's the sweet spot. I think that's where you need to be. Wait until you have to have like a legal reason to get married. Whether it's like, okay, now we have assets. Okay, now one of us needs health insurance. Wait until that's a thing. Because I can tell you, splitting up and divorcing, God, that's a fucking nightmare. So, um, yeah. Anyways, moving on to the next question. This is from a redditor. It says, "Just let it go. Just move on. People always say these things, but they never say how or even where to start. What if I don't want to move on or let go? Do you have any advice?" So, um, people say that because it's true. It's very hard to deal with and learn to cope with things. How you deal with that depends on the situation, when you're dealing with, and like what you're dealing with, and like at what stage of your life you're in. I know for me, the hardest thing I had to move on from was the death of a mother figure, and that was the only thing that helped. That was time. It's the hardest thing I thought I had to move on from was like a girlfriend before that. But looking back at that part of my life, I didn't, I didn't waste too much time dwelling on those emotions, and I probably should have. It's one of those things you push it down, eventually come back up, but that's just the way. That's a lesson learned with time and wisdom. And I think the first real step you should take is to recognize that you are feeling that way. Like your feelings are real and they're necessary. You shouldn't try to fight your feelings too hard. Just learn to accept you're feeling them and try to transition them into what's actually happening at that present moment. And I think the time to start practicing something like that's like right now. Yeah, you can hop on YouTube and type in mindful meditation, and there's countless hours of that kind of stuff help you focus on like what's happening right here, right now. I know one of my favorite ones is it's a humorous one where it's like you need a break from work. And so it's one of my sister shared with me. And it's like, fuck those bitches. They're 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 assholes anyway. Take a deep breath. Breathe it out. So I'll have to find that one. I'll link it in the notes if anyone's interested in listening to that one at all. This one is how do you deal with like apathy? Also, what's it like being a dad? Is it cool? Is it hard work? So I think the only way to get over apathy is to do something about it. I mean, just you can change your music genre. Like I mentioned that earlier, but you can change your music genre. Um, and then take some time and celebrate small victories. Be like, hell yeah, I walked a mile today. Or hell yeah, I went fishing. Hell yeah, I finished my fourth book this year. Do this enough, eventually you realize you're happier and being more active, and you'll be surprised at how much you've accomplished, especially when you pay attention to what you're actually doing. That's something that we just don't do enough. We don't realize how far we've come as people because we don't think about it. Now, there's a book that's out there. It's called The Morning Miracle. It's a short read. I think it's like a $10 book. Um, it it's basically a sales pitch to join his, well, I don't know, whatever fucking that weird subsection like cult like following that happens when it comes to these motivation guys. But it's a good book nonetheless. There's some good quality information in there. Just don't drink the Kool-Aid. Now, being a dad, it's I shouldn't say probably, it is legitimately the coolest thing I've ever done. Um, I never really like, and I know my dad, he's around, but I never really had one. It's And every day I get to see my kids. I wonder why in the world someone wouldn't want to be a dad. You don't know what, and you just don't know what hard work is until you're actually raising a family. But man, it's so much fun. I love my two kids. They have wonderful personalities. I've watched them grow now for more than 10 years. Um, and anyone who knows my kids knows they're good kids. They're doing everything they can. They're having fun the way kids should have fun. Something I never had, and that's the best part about being a dad is seeing them flourish in ways I never could have imagined myself doing. And here's a fun one: should I smoke cigarettes? Absolutely not. Do not smoke cigarettes. I'm a former smoker, and quitting was the absolute worst. Plus, they kill you. They give you cancer. They're expensive. They make you smell bad. It's a lose lose all the way around. Um, Pot. I mean, it's debatable. It's not for me anymore. But like, if it's illegal and it's not abused, like, yeah, why not? It's got its place in this world. If you're talking about meth, hard no. Always say no to meth. Pass on that shit. All right. Anyways, moving on to the next question. Excuse me while I scroll down my computer. Okay, here we go. So here's a bit of a genuine question that I think could do some good for readers, and it's good for me to hear as well. I didn't grow up with a father or any real male role models. How would one like myself and others try to prepare for being a father later in their lives? I myself am 23, and I still have a lot of personal problems to deal with from my past before I'm able to be a parent, but I would like to have a daughter someday. What advice would you, or what advice do you have for us guys in these shoes? And I think the root cause, like I think the root question, like what's at the core of this question is, how do I as a man fit into a relationship and eventually a family? Um Yeah, like I had mentioned a little bit earlier, I mean, I had no real firsthand guidance going into marriage or fatherhood. Unfortunately, it's just, I grew up around alcoholics, and that's just the way things were. My father wasn't around. He worked in Maryland. We lived in North Carolina. Um, but fortunately for my kids, I chose to change my family legacy, and that's a decision that you can make as well. I think step one is you shouldn't be afraid to seek for help, like seek out help. Now, when you mention having some issues and you need to work them out, you can find a solid mentor. You seek out a mental health counselor. That is probably your best route. I know I waited entirely too long to go get help for my mental health, and then I think the same goes for really anything. I mean, men tend to find themselves unwilling to ask for help, and like to this day, I still have a hard time like telling myself like, hey, there's a reason there are people in different professions. Like it comes to working on cars. Like I can't tell you how many cars I fucked up before I finally realized, hey, maybe I should hire a mechanic. And if you look at your mental health the same way, it makes a lot of sense. Like, hey, I'm struggling. What do I need to do to get help? And you talk to someone who's good at that kind of stuff. They're a professional for a reason. And I think step two is it's I think finding the right partner is such a crucial detail in life. I mean, there's three things that you really need to work on, like to have iron out to have a successful relationship. I think one is the first one's money. Money leads to a lot of divorces, so there's a lot of different ways you can approach this. We do separate accounts and a joint account. She has her money, I have my money. We have money that splits that pays the bills. We have a joint savings account for major purchases. We have bills split, your name, my name, and it works for us. Some people need to have like a joint account where it's, all of your money goes into the same pot. That works for you, good. Um, I think having a good sex life is a very big deal. Um, and then communication as well. I mean, those are the top three reasons for divorce. I mean, be interested in your partner, like be their cheerleader, and they should be yours as well. I mean, it's everything should be like we or us, not me or her. And that dynamic between my wife and I is I usually take, I usually take some leadership roles. I she'll take a few every once in a while, but I don't do anything without her approval. And when the roles reverse, she'll wait for my okay. Don't be afraid to jazz things up here and there. Be spontaneous, do nice things for each other. Guys, you and your spouse or partner in life, whatever, take time to talk about what's going on in each other's lives. I mean, you could do it once a month when you're going over like a budget or, just casual conversation when it's just you and you don't have kids around or whatever. Make sure you've taken the time to actually talk to your wife or your husband. It's important, especially in that. And then I would say the fourth one, but is making sure you pick a partner who's got the same maturity level as you do. Um, I know I've been in relationships in the past, and I think all of us do, where like they're they're in like a party phase, or you're in a party phase, and your partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, is not, and they're trying to be more settled down, and that type of thing like really wears on you. If you're not ready to have, if it's obvious the person you're with isn't ready to have a committed relationship and you're trying to push that on there, like it's I've seen it happen more than once where that's happening, like that's the relationship and they get married. Next thing you know, they're divorced in a year or two. And when it comes to fatherhood, um my personal approach to fatherhood is to lead my children into success by protecting them, providing for them, teaching them, and enjoying the time I have with them. As a father, my two kids, like they know and understand that my wife and I are here for them no matter what, and that we're always going to love them. And that's the most crucial part behind that. We like to spend individual time with our kids. My daughter and I, we'll have like daddy daughter date night. We'll have daddy daughter time. We'll watch movies. She loves popcorn. My son and I will do air. We'll fight some bad guys and we'll fix stuff. He's they're both daddy's kids. That I love it. I really do. And my wife and she'll take them out individually and they'll do mommy day or something like that. Um, but I make sure that my kids see me doing important things every day too, like the way I talk with my wife. They see me reading books. They see me exercising. They see me talking about my future, about their future. These are all things my parents never did. I also like sharing things that I enjoy with them, like Pokemon. Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing my son's going through right now. My daughter's going through it as well. And when it comes to being a dad, you're a tone setter for the kids. Every aspect of their life, they're going to see you or they're going to mimic you or mirror the way they saw when they were growing up. It happens to everybody. Now, in terms of being a man, I believe you should understand finances. You know, Getting out of debt or keeping it at a minimum is a brilliant thing you can do. Having an emergency fund, saving a little bit for retirement. I also believe it's important that a man should have hobbies. Um, I like to fish. I like to work out. We do the podcast. That's a lot of fun for me. I go to school. Um, Knowing the basics for cars, oil changes, tires are a good start, but also knowing how to troubleshoot and maintain a vehicle, whether it's spark plugs, brakes, things like that. Those are all great things to know. Um, and you can share that information with your kids. The next generation's a big deal. I know my kids like to work on the car with me. It's a little bit different than when I was a kid, just getting yelled at, holding a flashlight. Like I'll let my son hold the wrench. I'll let him try to break the bolt loose. He hasn't done it yet, but he's getting there. Um, I also think it's important that you do your best to avoid making excuses or blaming others. Owning things in your life, regardless of how screwed up it is. you know, at the end of the day, you're the one who has to deal with the shit and push on through it. And then always having some, I like to approach life with confidence. Um, if you don't, no one else, no one will. It's just one of those things. Even if you're faking it while you get through it, being willing to admit you're wrong, yeah, that's a part of being a confident person. And then I think it's important that you always improve yourself. Reading, exercising, trying new things, advancing your life one way or the other is an important detail rather than being like stuck in a rut. Like I know it's a bit of a long answer, and hopefully maybe one or two of you actually got some nuggets of wisdom out of that. Also, if you're 23 and you're thinking ahead like that, like man, that's more than most people will do. And now, before I wrap this up, some other general nuggets, wisdom that seem to be incredibly relevant, especially based on some of the subject matter we've covered. Have a plan for death. On the show and many shows like it, there's a lot of unexpected deaths, strange events. I mean, you really just never know when the fuck you're gonna die. So if you're married or like you have kids or a kid, having a general will drawn up or at least like writing some shit down somewhere, it's a good idea to have. I know, like in my personal life, we had a one of my great aunts passed away, and she wanted me to have her house, her land. I was I was the only one that actually spent time with this nice old lady, and she never wrote any of it down. So instead, one like her oldest sister, someone who she hadn't, I didn't even know she existed. To be honest with you, that says a lot. I mean, I talk about my great aunts. I knew all of them except for her, but God knows how long ago, like how long had passed before the two had actually talked. But because she was the oldest, she was put in charge. Now, if you have real assets, it's a good idea to have an estate plan. And those you find, there's several banks that are out there. Like I know banks that I've used in the past and are currently using, they'll have, you know, some paperwork in the corner somewhere about estate plans. They usually hook you up with a pretty decent deal. They probably partner with a local lawyer or something like that. Um, and lastly, like do good things for your community. Now that could mean like the place you live in, whether it's your town, your neighborhood, the street you live on. You can go out and you can do community service. That's cool. But the community could also mean the people that you value and hold close. Now I try to look out for my friends and family the best of my ability. Anyone who knows me is I'm the type of guy to give you a shirt off my back. Excuse me. I know like I'll do I've got college funds. Those are a great gift to give your niece, your nephew, your cousin. There's a few of them that are put out there. And then well, I take it back. One last thing. Buy some life insurance. Especially if you're still kind of young. I've seen the prices for some of the older generations, and boy howdy, is that shit expensive. But if you're like, the 20 to 40 range, you're probably healthy enough to get a decent price plan, and that's something that comes to handy, especially if you're married. You lose a year or two of income, it fucks a lot of people up. None of us, we're not living life the way we used to back in the day. So, but coming up in the future, some future shows we've got planned. We're going to be talking about the Leo Schofield case when we come back our next full show. That's a gentleman in Florida who got locked up for killing his wife, but he was completely innocent. It was some bullshit. Um, I found a sheriff that he was crooked, but he also liked going to diaper parties locally in North Carolina. So that'll be a fun one. We'll talk about that one soon when we do. We got a corrupt sheriff episode coming up soon. Um, but yeah, thanks for listening. Stick around. We'll be back to the full show before you know it.